Just doing my last little bit of random prep for the show here. And you see the countdown. We should be all set, but just in case, I'm checking a couple of things. So last week, or actually the last couple of weeks, I didn't do anything with thing onto Facebook as well, and it looks like Facebook is not cooperating. So hopefully you guys can still hear me and everything else is going okay. And I guess, yeah, that's why we start just a little bit sooner, just in case stuff just does not cooperate. And it looks like, unfortunately, the Facebook stream is not cooperating too much. I'll tell you what, I've been streaming now for about 4 or 5 years almost, and like the voodoo that goes on behind the scenes as far as like streams working or not working, I'll never fully get used to it. Yeah, I was hoping to put both a stream here on YouTube and on Facebook, but I know that Facebook actively tries to stop streaming to multiple platforms, and we had like an update on my broadcasting software, and as a result, for a couple weeks it didn't work at all, and it seemed to at least offer streaming to 2 platforms again, but it looks like it's not working. So YouTube only it is. And I still have a little bit of a cough, so that's why you're kind of hearing me clear my throat a lot. So guys, welcome to the show. This is the 3rd show this month, which is absolutely insane. Like just the number of corals we had to prep for the last 3 weeks. But this is the biggest of the 3 live shows. It's going to encompass pretty much the entire gamut of corals, from SPS, LPS, zoanthids, soft corals, pretty much everything under the sun. So hopefully you guys shopping in the US anyways will see something you like. If you have any questions about any particular coral, by all means, just throw it into chat, and either myself or probably somebody else in chat might know the answer. If you're new to this, the way that this show works is you can purchase corals on Tidal Gardens. There is a live show category. So for example, if you were interested in coral number 3, this ACROPORA, you would go to the live show section, and right there you'll see item number 3. Just throw it into your shopping cart and check out just like it's any other item. So there is also an FAQ. You might want to check out that because you know, there are some tips and tricks that that are helpful. So for example, just putting everything into your shopping cart doesn't reserve it for you. You actually have to finish the checkout process. So a lot of times people make multiple purchases and they just select local pickup / live sale as the shipping method so that they're not charged multiple instances of shipping. As for the shipping price, it is a fixed rate $39.99 and excuse me, and it's free over $250. So there's that. Just run a different channel on broadcast software to the second platform. That would work, actually. It might be a little bit taxing to do from one computer, but I do have a second computer. It might be possible. So that's a good suggestion, one production. I used to just be able to do it just from the single broadcast software, but times change. Nanofish 180. Hey Than, do you take PayPal? Yes, PayPal is one of the checkout methods. Any plate corals today? So Eric Madan. Unfortunately, there's no plate corals. If you're talking about like fungia, like Cycloceras, that type of plate coral, we do not. If you're talking about plating corals, there's plenty of chalices and plating SPS and things like that. Please like the floor update on Patreon, Dan. Oh, thank you. So if you guys follow me on some of the other social media platforms, one of the big things that we did very recently was staining the concrete floor downstairs. So if you're on Patreon or if you're on Instagram or on Twitter, I posted like a picture or two showing the work in progress. So the concrete guys came yesterday to do the initial acid etching and staining. The next step is going to be putting down the sealer, which will make it a lot darker and give it a gloss finish. And I was having a conversation with some folks on Instagram about making it so that despite being a glossy sealer, that it's not super slippery when it gets wet, because unfortunately we're handling a lot of water here and I don't want this whole place to turn into like a slippery death trap. So we were talking about like some additives that the concrete guys can put into the sealer, and that'll help give it just a little bit of grit. So on one hand, it's like the smoother and glossier it is, the easier it is to clean. But at the same time, if it gets wet, it gets kind of treacherous and slippery. So it's kind of that balancing act between keeping people safe and keeping the place cleaner, I should say. Awesome, thank you. You sound better today. Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, for the most part, I am healthier. I do have a little bit of a residual cough, but I mean, compared to what I was, this is nothing. Can you show some scolies or lobos? I think that there's only one scoli and one lobo, if I recall correctly. And it's at the very, very end, so you have to stay tuned for that. Epoxy resin seal? No, it's not an epoxy. So I had to do a little bit of research and look into what the differences were and stuff like that. Epoxy is kind of like a paint. So it forms its own layer. Like stains and the stuff that we're using, it actually kind of etches into the concrete itself and gives it color. So it's not like its own material layer. But the sealer kind of is, I guess. Yes, so Eric was talking about fungia. So when people talk about like fungia plates, they're kind of talking about several possible different genera. I always say genuses, and the plural is actually genera. Anyway, So there's like Cycloceras, there's actual fungia, there's whatever tongue corals are, and there's like Diaceras, which is kind of interesting because those are fairly easy to propagate. They have kind of like this wafer-thin skeleton that forms like segmented plates, and you can break off the segments and it regains its shape. So we have a really cool like red Diaceras, but we haven't grown it out enough that we could start selling them. They're going to be pretty pricey just because they're just simply outstanding. Occasionally we'll see some fungia from like Australia and stuff like that. And so there might be some on the website, but there's currently none on the live show, I don't think. I don't remember seeing one. Robert Baker, love the shirt, thank you. Yeah, I got it like a long time ago, but it's one of my favorites, and whenever I can pull it off, I give it a try. It's very Las Vegas, and I haven't been in like party mode for a very long time. Are Alveopora hard to care for? I would say it's middle of the road as far as LPS goes, trending a slight bit towards the more challenging end of the spectrum. It's not the easiest to care for LPS, but there's not any super crazy challenges to it either. I think Goniopora gets associated a lot with Alveopora, and Goniopora for a long time has had like a bad reputation for survival. And even amongst those corals, there's different species, and some do very well, some do very poorly. So it kind of depends on which one you end up with. Alveopora tend to be a little bit more consistent. We tend to not have issues with it. One thing though that I have noticed about Alveopora is that sometimes when they get stressed out, they can retract so heavily that they look like they're practically dead. It looks like a completely bare skeleton, and it almost feels like, oh, it's dead, I should just take it and throw it away. But about 3 days later, it's completely extended as if nothing was wrong in the first place. And so when people order Alveopora from me, I always kind of keep an eye out for any kind of DOA type activity, because it's a lot of times just the stress of shipping them will make them completely collapse down to the point where all you see is skeleton. And I'd say, you know what? I mean, you're covered in case that there is something wrong, right? We do guarantee the corals for shipping, but there's a good chance that that coral's fine. It just needs to settle down and come out later. What's your opinion on Blue Ridge Heliopora? It's an interesting kind of offbeat coral. For us, we have like mixed success with it. Either it grows like rampant to the point where it's like almost out of control, or it just kind of dies back randomly. They're not a particularly difficult coral. We don't do anything special as far as care requirements, but they're interesting. They kind of have like this leathery texture to them. And we haven't sold any for a long time because I think that right now, all the stock that we have of it, it's kind of like in this middling ground of kind of okay, kind of not so great. Definitely doesn't look that pretty, but when they're doing well, they should be like leathery and more blue rather than like a brown color. Ernie Wallace, thank you. $20, very generous of you, thank you. $20 should finish that new build. I always appreciate your content. Every little bit helps. We're looking at April to get our first set of aquariums. I need to touch base with Reef Savvy and to see if we're on pace for that time frame. I need to obviously work out the logistics of going down there and getting them, bringing them back, unloading them, getting them into place. There's like a whole lot that kind of goes into a big move like that, because these aquariums, they are hundreds of gallons. They're all made out of 3/4 inch glass, meaning that they're heavy as all heck. And yeah, they're all like 10.5 feet long. Hey, Dad. Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. I brought all kinds of buns and more buns. Thank you. You can snack on that later. Yeah, so I'm definitely looking forward to like this whole building project has been an adventure in its own right, but I'm kind of over the construction part. I kind of want to get into the aquarium part, right? Dharma Bum. How often, if ever, do you see Hemperentia anemones? Very uncommonly. I need to do a search as to what those are exactly. I have an idea, but typically the anemones I see are bubble tips. Occasionally I see a long tentacle, not lately. A carpet occasionally, not lately. Lots of flower anemones from the Caribbean, and we still have a lot of mini maxis from Vietnam from way back in the day, but I haven't seen any of those get imported recently. Mike Leonard, hi. Left local frag swap to buy more corals online. There you go. There you go. It's a healthy pastime, right? Don't be greedy, then share the goodies. Let's see, what is this? So this is like, I think it's like they're warm, which is kind of cool. So what is this? It's a taro and bean filled, it's kind of like mochi, right? If you guys are familiar with mochi. I know you're not supposed to eat on stream, but I am kind of curious. Mochi. And of course it's gonna gum up my mouth like crazy. And thank you so much, K-Town Reefer, for the Canadian 279. Giving Two Please a shout out there. If you guys are new to the stream, Two Please is like the $1.99 king of Super Chat. Ugh. The tentacles look very much like feathers. I guess I'm not familiar with that. No, I typically don't see that. Anemones are kind of tricky. A lot of times, at least from the importers that I've seen, they don't ship particularly well. So whenever I can, I try to source them from local hobbyists. The other day, one of my close friends, Will, he was getting rid of a few of his bubble tips, so I gave him like a trade. But like, I encourage you guys as much as possible to get corals from other hobbyists that have grown them successfully, because when you're talking about like quality of corals, there's a big difference between corals that are just recently imported to like a store. And obviously, like, we try to do a whole lot with aquaculture and keep long-term cultures. But if you see stuff that's just fresh from the ocean versus something that that somebody's been growing for a very long time, those are two completely different animals, and they might be the exact same genetic thing, but just because they've been acclimated for a long period of time in a home aquarium, oh, they do so much better. And that's kind of like my thing with a lot of anemones, because some of them don't ship well, and they have like these latent issues that might not be completely apparent just from the initial import. And just like a few weeks down the line, it might just turn into complete mush. Whereas like either the captive bred ones, or at least the ones that have been in a home aquarium for a long time, tend to do so much better. Brandon S., can we bid on these? So if you're in the US and would like to purchase any of these, you can go to tidalgardens.com/live. I'll even put that in the chat here. And if you go to that website, you can see all of these item numbers. So for example, I'm looking at item number 29 here, this purple and green LEPTASTREA. And if you wanted that, you just check out like it's any regular item. So you can shop from the live show right now, or you can just shop from other portions of the site if you like, throw it all into your shopping cart and check out. So it's not really an auction, so to speak, but if you're okay with the price, $20, item number 29 is that. Yeah, no worries, Brandon. So yeah, if you just go to tidalgardens.com/live, and there's also like an FAQ link there, so that'll kind of go over just like some tips and tricks as to how to participate in the live show. And this is all assuming that you are in the U.S. because we only ship to, excuse me, United States plus Puerto Rico. Yeah, and shipping is $39.99 flat rate. Thank you very much, Aaron, for putting that out. And it's free once your total hits $250. So if you place like multiple orders, and eventually you hit that $250 mark, it's either going to be free shipping, or if you had previously paid for shipping, we will refund you. So LEPTASTREA is one of those corals that I don't think that I've done a video on. I'd say that I've been slouching on the video content, but we've just been so busy here. Between me going on vacation, coming back and getting sick for 2 weeks, and then having to ramp up and do 3 live shows in 3 weeks, it's really cut into my production for the actual channel itself. And that's crushing to me because I've got all these other friends on YouTube that, with their own different topics and channels, and then they've produced like 5 videos where I've produced none in that time, and I feel so guilty. It's a shame that you can't deliver to Ireland. Yeah, it's like we looked into doing some kind of export, but it doesn't work at the consumer level. For example, if you were just like wanting to buy like 6 corals and getting it sent over there, that's not gonna happen. It's very, very expensive to get stuff over there. Richard Miller. Stuff from the ocean takes months sometimes to adjust to my system if they survive at all. Everything from me grows like crazy as soon as it hits a tank. Well, thank you. Appreciate that. Appreciate that vote of confidence that we're doing something right occasionally. But it's that's a trend that anybody in the hobby should be seeing. Like the shipping process is obviously very stressful, so that's a no bueno. But we try our best to ship well. But long story short, though, the important thing is that these things aren't just like freshly imported stuff. Some of the stuff that we have is more recent than others, but a lot of what we have we've been growing for a very long time. Like these yellow bird's nests, like item number 34, this was a culture started, no joke, probably 2-3 years ago. Like we don't even remember where we got them. That's been so long. Same thing for like a lot of the POCILLOPORA that you're seeing. A lot of the older SPS colonies that we have. I mean, geez, I don't even remember if we got it as a colony, if we got it as a single frag. I don't even know who was president when we got it. I mean, it could have been George Bush. Like, it's been that long. Lynn N, thank you for the super chat, $9.99. Thank you, Tidal Gardens. Aside from being beautiful, your corals are hardy. They survive my tank, and you have great customer service. Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah, we try to take care of people when possible. I mean, like every now and again, like you can't help them. You can't help people out from certain situations, but I try. Adam, how many people work for Tidal Gardens? Is it just you? No, it's not just me. So Ben is my full-time guy, and we have like occasional part-time help just to do like a water change here and there, and we just like trade a couple corals or something, or like some frozen food. And then my parents help out. And my parents they're retired basically. My dad's not retired, but he's here all the time. He would much rather be doing this than working at the university. That's for sure. I'd like to hear more about the business aspects. It might be a little less interesting than you might think, but you might see more of that as the new building stuff comes along. I think that a lot of the commentary about like the business side of things kind of gets lumped into that, whereas A lot of the other videos kind of get lumped into the, I guess a lot of the other videos kind of like handle the hobby-specific stuff. But yeah, the business stuff I guess could be interesting. Thumbs up everyone, K-Town Reefer with a US $1.99 roughly. Appreciate it. I love your coral spotlights, miss them very much. Sometimes it's hard just when we're so behind to get these videos out. And that's like such a lame excuse, but we've just been crushed busy lately. So this upcoming month, I don't plan on doing 3 live shows. I think I'm just gonna do like 1 or 2, probably 2. And that should give me a lot more flexibility to get some actual coral related videos out. Not that this video isn't coral related, but you know what I'm talking about. Like the heart and soul of this channel aren't these live sales. They are like the fully produced. Oh my gosh, I just made a huge mess. There's like coconut all over my desk now. Yeah, but the heart and soul of this channel is definitely like the hobby related content. You and Ben are great, but Dad is my favorite. Oh man. So I've got a kind of a funny relationship with my folks when it comes to, you know, working here. They kind of do their own thing. They're kind of completely unmanageable. So, you know, sometimes stuff gets placed in a weird spot and like a fish just comes in, like eats all their frags. Sometimes they're propagating corals that probably shouldn't be run through a bandsaw. Like my dad doesn't know the coral names at all. He's been, you know, just taking stuff and just cutting it. But yeah, he just kind of does his own thing. Devin Hardy, are you still trying to grow clams? No. Maybe in the future we'll dabble once again, but clams, they hate us. And they show their displeasure by dying horrible deaths. Will you be at Aquashella in Dallas? Yes, I will. I just made my travel plans. So you can thank Rico, and you can thank Fritz Aquatics for sponsoring my trip down there. Because that's the only way that's going to go down. Yeah, I'm actually looking forward to it. I don't think I've ever been to Dallas. And I was hoping to see one of my friends from like a past career. He had set up his business in Dallas. And when I reached out to him, he's like, actually, we've relocated to Austin, Texas. So unfortunately, I can't see my friend. But if you guys are going to be there, definitely pull me aside, say hello. I'm planning on bringing my camera. I'll be shooting a little bit of footage. It should be a fun show. Aquashella in Chicago was like a pleasant surprise. It was this mix of an art and music festival. And if you guys are unfamiliar with it, it's put on by, I guess, a creative team. But I think the two, I guess, like headline personalities are Sean Hale from Fritz and George Coralfish 12G on YouTube, if you're familiar with his channel. And yeah, they did a really good job. Very creative, a lot of artwork. Yeah, it's very different. It's very different from MACNA, which is more of like a very industry focused show. This one is a lot more hobbyist facing, I would say. So yeah, if you're if you're able to travel to one of those Aquashellas, it's good to check one out, because it is it's definitely different than a lot of shows that I've seen. Still waiting on my tax returns to purchase from Than. This sucks. Aw. Yeah, IRS, get going. This is the first time in a long time that I've hired an accountant to do my taxes. And I'm like, I have no idea if that my taxes are even filed yet. That's like a weird feeling for me because usually I just do my own. And so I know exactly if I'm going to be filing late or whatever, but it's kind of just like I haven't heard from my accountant in a while. Joseph Pooza, Reefapalooza in NY. I have never been to a Reefapalooza. I hear they're very good. But I met I think it was Lou at a MACNO one year, and he invited me over to one. But again, it's like I don't really travel to a lot of shows. Like there was like a show today, for example, about 30 minutes from my house, and clearly I'm not there. So I don't travel. It's like last year I think I only went to one show. I went to Aquashella in Chicago. This year, the only one on my calendar is the Dallas show. And that's it. Like that might be it. Be current. Got corals from the last live show. Your shipping methods are great. Very secure packaging. Best quality care I've seen yet. Oh, thank you. Yeah, shipping methods are something that we're always looking to try and improve. Like, the worst thing that can happen is for our packages to show up on time in decent weather and still have DOA issues. Like that's the last thing I want to see. Because I mean, we do cover like DOAs and we don't get reimbursed by UPS or FedEx or whoever we're using at the time. So it's just all on us. So if, for example, you guys had purchased a watermelon SAKURA for $35 and we ship it to you and it just doesn't do well like 3 days into it, you guys are covered. Like we're gonna either send you like a replacement along with a future order or refund you $35, probably in the form of a gift card. But yeah, it sucks. So if we can do more like R&D and investment on the shipping end to prevent losses, I mean, it makes a huge difference. Like fireworks SAKURA for $45, and these are like reduced prices compared to what is typically on our website even. So sometimes these are like $60. Like losing a $60 coral, I mean, it would have cost maybe 10 cents more per coral to do a better job packing. It's like, do a better job packing if possible, right? So anyway. Yeah, shipping is no joke. And shipping prices are going up 5%, like for us. Just UPS and FedEx this year both announced like, yeah, shipping rates are gonna go up 5%, which by the way, are already sky high. Like you might see that, oh, our shipping rate is $39.99 flat rate. I guarantee you what we're paying is more than that because we're already paying probably $10 in packaging material, like for the box, for all that stuff. Just for all the printouts, the pamphlets, all the labeling, all that stuff, it's probably well over $10. And we get like a decent discount, a pretty aggressive discount, and I guarantee just the shipping component alone is still going to be more than $39.99. So if you really want to get the best shipping deal, buy more than $250 because for you, it's like an automatic built-in savings of $40, right? But it like the real savings on shipping, it's really, really quite high. So if you don't believe me, you are more than welcome to purchase a shipping label from UPS and just email it to me and we will stick it on there and it'll be on your dime. And then you'll be horrified when, if we're shipping to California or something, that box might be $150 to ship. Just throwing that out there. Ryan McCollum, do you do a lot of frag shows? If you're talking about like the in-person frag swaps, no. Like I don't do any of them. But do frag shows as on the YouTube and sometimes Facebook side of things. We try to do at least one a month and hopefully more. But like this month we've been very good. We've done three live shows. But generally speaking, we only get to do maybe one or two at the most. Ryan, we missed your ass. He might make it into one of these clips. He toned down the last couple times I see it. I mean, he still zips around, but that one day he was just doing laps. I would love to see Than be a speaker on RAP. I've done my share of public speaking. I don't know what I would talk about. I have no idea what I would talk about. Eric Ocean, greeting from the Netherlands, Than. Good to see you're looking better. Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm glad to be feeling better. Again, slight cough still. It's not a big deal. Considering where I was to where I am now, like, shoot, you just rewind the footage, right? Rewind the footage from 2 weeks ago. Like, I wasn't even on camera. You guys don't need to be seeing any of that. I couldn't even talk half the time. I had to just be typing. Dosing, do you calculate? Huh? I'm not quite sure what you're asking, but I will answer generally. What we do in terms of maintaining our chemical parameters, it's really just two things right now. It is water changes that we should be doing more frequently. Because just by removing some water, replenishing that, just by dilution of getting this influx of new chemistry getting in there, helps to normalize your levels, right? The second thing is we run a calcium reactor, which might be an extravagance for most people's regular sized tanks, let's say in the ballpark of 50 to 100 gallons. Anything less than that probably doesn't make sense to do. Anything above that, I couldn't encourage it enough because it's an expensive technology to get into, but it's a dirt cheap technology to operate, and it is like silky smooth as to what it does for your water chemistry. So those two are like my baseline for maintaining water chemistry. Now, there are instances where fast-growing corals, not necessarily like a lot of the LPS that you're seeing on screen here. Well, actually, this Hollywood Stunner, that is a fast-growing LPS. But in particular, things like bird's nest, fast-growing SPS like POCILLOPORA or MILLEPORA, they can really just soak up a lot of the calcium, alkalinity, magnesium parameters. And it'll outpace our relatively infrequent water changes and also the calcium reactor. So in those situations, you have to look into, I guess, a secondary or tertiary form of calcium supplementation. So you're looking at Kalkwasser along with your auto top off. You are looking at 2-part and kind of balancing it towards what you might be low in. So for example, in this aquarium that you're seeing, we've had chronically low alkalinity because of the growth rate of a lot of our SPS in there. And stuff looks fine, but on paper, you would be pretty horrified with the numbers that are coming back with the water testing. So what we did recently is we purchased some large volume containers of Bionic. If you guys are familiar with Bionic, it's kind of like, it's a 2-part solution. I mean, you guys are familiar with those. They are a really old school, like tried and true brand as far as 2-part solutions go. I know Bulk Reef Supply has like a really good product out there that a lot of people use. I think they no longer sell their biggest containers though, and I think that is why this past time we went with Bionic, because we're still able to get 5-gallon containers of it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the last time that I looked, I didn't see on Bulk Reef Supply like the 5-gallon containers of their 2-part. So you can fact check that for me. But yeah, that's kind of why we wanted Bionic. And we have had a lot of experience with Bionic, and so have a lot of people for a really long time. So not sponsored, but they're a pretty good product. Pretty good. So I'm behind in chat. I'll try to cover these real fast. Texan Boy 22. Been real busy lately. Haven't gotten to see any of your February live shows. How was the trip? Trip was great. I went to Vietnam. Spent a couple hours in Japan. It was a cool trip. I got to do a little bit of snorkeling, saw the coral reefs there. We went to a really cool island resort. It was a lot of travel, so once we were kind of swinging back through Ho Chi Minh City, it's like a very busy downtown, and I hit the wall. I was like a total jerk to my friends. I needed just to be alone in my hotel room, and then eventually I went and got a massage. And that was like the best thing I can say about that, because I was a mess. Then when I came back, I went from 90-degree weather there to minus 10-degree weather here, and immediately got the flu, and I've been sick for the past 2 weeks. And I'm just now getting over it. Let's see. Hey, Than, you come across a lot of Japanese leathers. So if we're talking about like the bright green tipped toadstools, you don't come across those anymore. Like, they're not imported. So your only hope is to find some aquacultured. We might have a few, but they're not going to be available for some time. For whatever reason, people have this idea that soft corals are very, very fast growing. Surprisingly slow to aquaculture. Surprisingly slow. MXR52T, do you plan on eventually offering larger colonies besides frags? That's a possibility. A lot of times when we're offering larger colonies, they tend to not be fraggable, and that's kind of how we got to that point. But a lot of times the price point isn't that attractive. So like for the live shows, it's almost exclusively frags, right? And part of that is also ease of shipping, because when it comes like time to ship out these corals, having to bag a coral versus the typical way of where we use the reusable cups, it adds so much time that like it cuts into our ability to actually get everything shipped out on Monday and Tuesday. Very challenging. Having said that, it's not out of the question to do larger colonies. However, with the landscape of how coral import is done now and things like that, I would expect to see fewer and fewer colonies, period, available, because there's like a major coral shortage in the industry. What time is the stream over at? You can kind of do a little bit of quick math on that. We're on item number 68. We're going to be going to item number 180 something, and we're spending roughly 35 seconds per coral. So I'm going to guess a little over an hour, maybe. Maybe I'm doing the math very wrong. Maybe hour, 20 minutes. Shipping to Canada, unfortunately, no. It is US only. Thank you, Alien Scientist fan, for getting on that. And K-Town Reefer. Yeah, I did look into that briefly. It's expensive. It will be very expensive. So, for example, if like everybody in Toronto that wanted to place an order kind of got together, we could probably get everybody's order out in one big shipment, and you guys can kind of like divvy it up once it gets to Toronto or to Montreal or something like that. But it would have to be like everybody all at once, and we have to work out the logistics, because it ain't cheap. It's not going to be like, oh, one person wants 6 corals, because the shipping associated with that is going to be 4 figures at least. Red Ford, got to go to work. See ya. Thanks for the advice. You're welcome. Enjoy. And if you want to come back and hang out later in the recap, so all these live shows, they get published online, so you can watch all of our live shows all the way back 4 years if you really felt like it. So for the folks that are new to the whole live show thing, you can kind of get an idea of what things look like. And also what's kind of interesting to see is how corals look different at different times of the year, because we're growing in a greenhouse, and because it's in a greenhouse, it's very much affected by the seasonality. And there are definitely corals that look a lot better in the wintertime versus the summertime and vice versa. Ernie Wallace, +1 on ESV B Ionic, used it since 2004. Yeah, it's a very good product. You know what's really funny though? I don't think anybody knows what ESV means. I looked up on their website, I looked all over it. I have no idea what ESV actually stands for. Tropic Marine sells 55-gallon drums of dry compound. Okay. Those are large. Those are large. And Tropic Marine, it's like that's a very expensive brand. I don't know if that'll work into my poor man's budget here. Started dosing calc again. I like the higher pH. Yeah, pH issues are something to, I guess, pay attention to, but not freak out over. A lot of times people with aquariums that are down into the basement suffer from ventilation issues, and that tends to dip down the pH of their aquarium, just because there isn't the gas exchange that's necessary. And so you kind of get a lot of kind of trapped air in a house that's not like super well ventilated, in the worst room for ventilation. So in those situations, doing a Kalkwasser drip with like for top off essentially, calc is very high in pH, and that can help ease the low pH issues that you see. How do you keep number 71 alive? They keep dying on me for no reason. Not sure if I remember which one that was. Let me take a peek. It might have been like a, it might be a, what do you call it? Was it an alveopora of some sort? Sometimes people just have like success with certain corals rather than well, not rather. It's like sometimes just people have different experiences with corals. Like Goniopora and Alveopora, one of my friends just grows it like gangbusters. And I don't have nearly that type of success. But you know, he's keeping a very different methodology. And it's a methodology that never worked for me. So it's like I'm not exactly going to be going about changing what we do here. Again, trying that because it totally didn't work for us. Cherry Blossom Alveopora. I figured that's what it was. Yeah, they are gorgeous. They're slower growing too. And I worry that like long term, they would be very difficult to propagate for us. So hopefully we are able to pick up their growth rate. Ernie, I think you use Omega-C, the salt. I bought a bag, noticed a lot of brown deposits and also some surface foam after mixing. Have you ever experienced that? I have not noticed brown deposits. And as far as surface foam, we always run into that no matter what we use. So I guess like that's not something that I typically worry about. Now, we do water changes, like our methodology for that really sucks. So we're basically mixing it once we drain our sump. We mix it in the sump and then we wait for as long as we can and then we fire it back up again. You don't want to do that. So in this new facility, we're going to be mixing up all of the salt in a 1,000-gallon container and have it on demand at every system. So when we start doing that, I think we're going to be paying a lot closer attention to things like potential deposits and stuff. But I hadn't heard of anybody having an issue with deposits like that. But yeah, we'll see. It's also an anhydrous salt from what I recall, and those typically tend to be cleaner. And maybe also I'm kind of skewed because I'm used to like instant ocean / reef crystals, and I mean that brand is like pretty much ubiquitous these days. But it's also but it's also like notorious for deposits, right? So I guess it's not the end of the world. That is kind of a curious, it's kind of a curious shopping thing that people look at when it comes to aquarium salts. Like, oh, it has deposits, therefore it's bad. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't even know if it makes any difference, really. Because I mean, how many people really complain about having trash results with reef crystals or Instant Ocean? Not too many. I mean, it's a very, 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 very popular brand. I would say that I would argue that the vast majority of the entire industry probably uses it, like over 80% maybe, like a huge portion. Adam is wondering, I bought a Monty cap from the LFS, which is very pale. It even grew a bit of algae. I'm worried it was DOA, but they said it was alive. Is it safe to use a toothbrush to get the algae off? If it's growing algae on it, that portion there is already dead. If you're really worried about it, like if it's very pale, I worry that it's probably getting too much light. You might want to see if you're overexposing it. And if it comes back, it'll regrow pretty much over any of the dead areas anyway, so I wouldn't worry too much. There's Sean, go blue to you too. What do you recommend for beginner SPS? Also, any forest fire digis today? I don't know if there's any forest fire digi now that I think of it. I don't remember shooting any. As far as beginner SPS, Aaron is suggesting green slimers and ACROPORA. I would also throw into there stylos and bird's nest. Those are also good options. Chris Groves, I've just bought my first bounce mushroom. Congratulations. I hope you have better luck with them than I do. For some odd reason, they like to just completely crash in my systems. I've lost a lot of really nice bounce mushrooms in the past year. Do you believe in dipping solutions? Yes, to a degree. I think they're very helpful and they do a good job when they work. But you can't assume that they're always going to do what you think they're going to do. So, for example, there are some things that pretty much dips do nothing to. For example, eggs. Most eggs are impervious to any kind of coral dipping. So once you do your dip, put it in your tank, a few days later, you still have a problem because all the eggs just hatched. Stuff like that just happens. Certain things are just hyper resistant, like nudibranchs in particular tend to be very tough. Certain crabs, they don't care. They'll just like laugh at you. But having said that, dipping is always a good practice, assuming you don't overdo it and just kill your coral, because you are working with something that is like a toxic agent. If you're able to avoid like a pest outbreak by dipping, and if that's all you ever do is just avoid one pest outbreak, all that dipping that you've done was worth it. But it's not like this panacea where it fixes all of your, all the potential for pests, right? You have to still kind of work on your observation skills to make sure that when pests happen, you see them and you can do something about it. The most helpful thing that I've discovered as far as like pest control and things, it's getting a collection of fish that handle the different types of pests. It's worked a lot better than just a dipping regimen, because there was a time where we were struggling with a certain kind of pest, and we probably dipped these corals over 50 times, and eventually what happens is the colony just dies. Like, you don't successfully take care of the pest issue, and you're kind of stressing them out more with the dip, and just over time you just like lose a couple more. and then they're all just all gone. However, once we started to do more with like wrasses and with damsels that are more active when it comes to clearing up pest issues, just having them in the tank, you might see a pest. You can dip it, great, put it back in, but the positive predatory pressure that those fish exert on the pest population, you don't have a situation where you just lose all your colonies. In fact, over time, there is no pest issue. So it's kind of nice. Having said that, every single time you get new coral, you're opening the door for more pests. And sometimes, like, I just like say a blanket statement to like my parents who do a lot of the purchasing, or Ben. It's like, no new Montipora, because every new Montipora that we add to our systems is risking all of the Montipora that we have. I'm sick of it. So again, it's you kind of have to have these processes in place to deal with pests. Dipping is good. Predatory pressure by fish is also very good. That was a very long answer, but that is as comprehensive as it's gonna get. Mostly reefs, digging the shirt, Dan. Thank you very much. Any Monty caps today? Yes, Ice's Reef. You should see plenty of Monty caps today. Skyman, any experience with Bayer dips? Yes, I have used Bayer. It's good. The only issue that I have with it is I like to see into the dip, and Bayer is like a milky consistency. Any suggestions for corals that copper band butterflies won't bother? Patrick, mine don't bother anything really. They've been like model citizens in my tanks. Oh, my bad guys, my bad. Sorry about that. We went over 6 of the early corals. Yeah, that was only 86. Yeah, so I have to break up my my video into multiple things. So I lost track of, I was like too busy talking, I lost track of where we were in the thing. So we went from 86 through 1 through 6 again, and now we're on 87. So there we go. Sorry about that, my bad. I fell asleep at the wheel. It's like I only had like one job, right? Just to hit the thing at the right time, and it just didn't happen. Dan, check the vid. I got it. I took care of it. I got it. Bayer is great. Seems to be super gentle. I think it's. I always thought it was a little bit more harsh, but who knows? So the reason why I have to like we'll have to break up this video into like smaller sections is because it takes forever for me to export this file. Like, it takes upwards of 5 hours to stabilize the footage. It takes another 5 hours to then export the file. And sometimes my computer just freezes. Like at, I don't know, 58% done. It'll just freeze, just lock up. Just start it all over again, start it all over again. So I started to break it up because just losing all that progress is like no fun. So if I lose progress now, it's like I lose a couple hours. It's not the entire day of processing. So but that does, you know, include these breaks that I have to throw in there. Let's see. Alexander, Fire and Blood, Game of Thrones reference. Maybe off topic, but talking about pests, how do you handle marine ick in such a large operation? It's surprisingly easy. We don't get it. Now, when we do buy additional fish, that is the only time where we're really at risk of reintroducing ick, because we're bringing in stressed out fish that always have ick. And the way that we really just deal with it is we put one cleaner shrimp in there and it's done. Like the skunk cleaner shrimps, the one with the little red racing stripe down their back, that's really all you need. That's really all we need. So as long as the entire tank just has one of those. You don't need to be like, oh, I need like 6 of them in my 50-gallon tank. No. We have like one of them in a 300-gallon tank. That's all you need. And if everything else is fine in your tank, you should not have ick. That should be the last thing you ever worry about. But again, sometimes what will happen is a fish will jump out of a tank, and whatever job that fish was supposed to be doing in there isn't getting done. It's like, fine, we need to buy some more fish, reintroduce those fish into the tank. You know, they have skirmishes, they get stressed out, and eventually they figure it out, but then a lot of times they get ick. So that's when like the little cleaner shrimp, again, that positive predatory pressure on your pest and disease, it goes a long way. I always thought Coral RX was harsher. I use a little bit of both. Yeah, we use Coral RX. I mean, it's pretty harsh. I don't know if there's any really gentle dips. And I think if the dip is too gentle, is it really working? I don't know. Joseph, any tips for taking amateur pictures of corals? What I would suggest is taking a look at this really old photography series that we did on this channel. It's probably, I don't know, 4 years old, 5 years old, I don't even know. But I do a couple of things. I talk about, in the first video, I talk about some photographic techniques and some tips and tricks, but it's really the basics of exposure that I'm talking about there. In the second video, I'm talking about post-processing, because people don't really get this, but like half of photography is editing an image file that is generated by a camera. So, I mean, obviously that type of stuff lends itself to abuse, but even just in learning about that abuse trains your eye to see it when it happens. So if you see, let's say, one of my photos, you might see some graphical artifacts that might indicate, no, there's some fudging of some color there. You know, usually we tend to be pretty conservative on that, but I mean, we definitely do edit from a raw file. Like, if you're not editing from from that file, you are essentially delegating that activity to your camera, and I guarantee your camera will do it worse than an experienced color grader. So that's kind of like the topic of the second video, and I give examples of how like you can take that editing to make your image look worse and less realistic. And when you see like those type of trends and artifacts start to show up in other people's photography, you can be like, okay, that's not what I can expect to see if I were to look at that coral with my eyes. So, you know, so you can take a look at that. That's the post-processing side of things. I haven't done anything where like we're talking about just shooting with a phone or anything like that, because that tends to be very challenging. Our aquariums for photography are one of the most difficult things to photograph. They're very dim, the lighting is all wonky, and especially with the proliferation of LEDs as like a very popular light source, that has done like a disservice for photography. Fan, I forget, what salt do you use? We use Omega C right now. It's a local Ohio brand. And originally when I made the decision to go with Omega, it was simply because of the logistics of ordering pallets of salt to my location. It was the least scientific method of choosing a salt. Long story short, I just wanted to try it out. As long as it didn't kill everything, I was just gonna stick with it. And I'm much less of a salt evangelist than other folks. I mean, some people are like, I tried this particular kind of salt and it has changed my hobby, right? I'm not that guy. Like, I think that most salts really should be striving to be similar to one another rather than dissimilar, because they're aiming for an objective standard, right? You're aiming for natural seawater, preferably close to a clean area of Indonesia or Australia where most of these corals come from. That is kind of the objective standard. Now, obviously, because we are not in the Great Barrier Reef, we are not in Indonesia, we have to have salt mixes that also work well for a captive environment. We might have slightly elevated calcium, alkalinity, magnesium, especially for stony coral dominated tanks. I get that, but there should be some like regression to the mean as far as like all these different salt brands, right? There shouldn't be a salt brand that just has insanely different water chemistry than every other brand. And I also would argue that a lot of the reef mixes that have very high levels of stuff might be doing you a disservice also. Because if you run into a situation where you have a chemical parameter that is climbing out of control, like when you're ever in that situation, like my calcium is 580 and I can't get it down, that's a problem, right? You don't want runaway values with every single water change you do, where like the salt mix just is naturally higher. That's kind of scary. I would actually rather the salt mix be low in stuff and let me boost it up slowly on my own. Because if it's like a runaway train, there's only so much you can do about that. And usually it involves switching salts, right? So Two Please is asking, so Omega has no raised levels? Not that I know of. Definitely not alkalinity, because we tend to be super low on that. Is Purple Haze Monty a plater or encruster? It is plating. Aaron just said, it's encrusting. It's actually a plating. Wait a minute, is that true? Purple Haze. No, you're right. I was thinking, sorry, Aaron. Aaron's right. It is an encrusting. The plating variety that I thought you were talking about is Idaho grape. Yeah, so Richard Miller, sorry for the confusion there. Purple Haze, definitely encrusting. No. So, anyhow, I'm all caught up on chat. I'm like looking at item number 106 right now, and it's like the footage looks like shaky. It's like I wonder if like the image stabilization just didn't work on that clip or something. Tech Gear Talk, what is up? So Tech Gear Talk is one of my YouTube friends, and he makes me feel so guilty for not producing more content, because he puts out so many more videos than me right now. And here, going into my like excuse bag of tricks here, I've been really sick for a long time. I went on vacation, so clearly like no videos are going to be made. And then once I came back, and after getting sick, I still ran through 3 live shows in 3 weeks. So that drastically cut into my regular scheduled videos. But I'm very much looking forward to getting back into that. Like sometimes, like people that aren't YouTube creators don't know this, but if you've done the whole video creation thing for a little while, burnout is real, and it manifests differently in different people. Like sometimes people just get like angry and frustrated and sad, but the way that it manifests in me sometimes is like I just get like this, like a writer's block of some sort, where I just have nothing to say. Like, so for example, like this, like ACROPORA, or like ACROPORA, which it just switched to. You know, sometimes it's like all of my thoughts about coral become so like grayed out that it looks just like the stuff I would say about this coral would be no different than any other coral. Like, what's the point of me even discussing it if it's literally just insert blank coral here and it's all the same? Like that's kind of like this weird haze that happens when I get burnt out, where I have like nothing to say. So if you guys, for example, are familiar with Coral Magazine, I mean, I wrote what must have been a 15-page article on ACROPORA. Clearly, at a different time, I had a lot to say about ACROPORA. But when you hit that wall, for whatever reason, it's like there's just no content going through my head about any of this stuff. And you know, we've done a lot of like publishing in that on a number of different topics, so it's not like, oh, I never had anything to say. So yeah, it's weird, and sometimes you just have to like, you know, work your way through that, or even like take a break. And I guess I have taken a 3-week break, right? So I should be over it, but it wasn't exactly the most relaxing break. So hopefully I can kind of get back on that horse and get back into the video production stuff, because I really do enjoy it. And I've made an astronomical investment into equipment to do this sort of production. So like to say, I'm just not feeling it now, isn't really an option. I mean, just like this camera that you're looking in, that is shooting me right now, that's not a webcam, guys. It's not a webcam. It's a pretty serious piece of equipment that should always be pointed at my aquariums, like 24/7. I mean, there should be like machine time allocated to always using it, because it is a tremendously big investment. And yeah, you know, like the channel, it's the only reason it is what it is. It's not because of these live shows. It's not because of anything other than high quality produced content. And it's been a long time since I've done that recently, seemingly. So yeah, definitely need to get back on that. Tech Gear Talk. I hope I don't make you feel guilty. Well, you do. Well, the other thing is like Tech Gear Talk makes such good videos on top of that. It's not just like, oh, he's just like cranking out like 6 videos a day. They're all trash, right? They're not all just like trash reaction videos to like Nicki Minaj videos. No, it's like really good stuff all the time. High production value. You know, he's not doing like a I don't know. I'm just trying to think of like lazy content. Poorly edited vlogs are lazy content. Or reaction videos. That's lazy content. No, he's doing great stuff, you know, at a very, very fast pace. Meldium Fan, how much war would be between a Galaxia and a war coral Favia? Mine are getting kind of close. Galaxia is a dangerous coral when anything gets close to it. They are like the definition of hyper aggressive. So I would try to give that coral as much room as possible. Aaron, some salts have a high mag or whatever reason for bad batch. It's possible. Like, if you guys saw how the proverbial sausage was made when it comes to salt mixes, it's not rocket science. There's like state of the art in salt manufacturing. It's pretty rudimentary, and it's entirely possible that the machinery didn't mix well enough. The machinery didn't get cleaned frequently enough to have like clumping of stuff to get a bad batch. It happens a lot more than you might think. So yeah, it's good to pay attention to that. It is good to check your baselines when you're mixing up, you know, new batches of salt. I mean, you might, I mean, don't go crazy, but it's good to know. Like, I don't know if you, so one of the wholesalers in the UK, Laura from Eco Marines, she tests her water every day. We're lucky to test our water once a month. So again, yeah, it's hard to say. Let's see. Fish school, you should have went to Lear. Fish school, I have drama with Lear. Like I'm usually pretty non-dramatic, but I have drama with Lear, so that's why I'm not at Lear. My parents went though, so hopefully, and so I'm guessing you went, so hopefully you had a good time there. But you will never see me at Lear. Let's see, what else? Okay, can. Yeah, I'm currently using Coral Pro Salt from Red Sea, which I mixed properly beforehand. I've yet to have very elevated levels. Good. Red Sea Coral Pro would be one of the salt mixes that might be victim to fluctuation in batches, because of the way, from what I understand, how they do, how they make their salt. Because I believe they desiccate actual salt water from the Red Sea, right? So depending on like when they're collected, where they're collected, it could have like some variation there. Lamira Robinson, sorry, I missed your question from earlier. Any bubble corals on the show today? No, there's not. We only have one bubble coral in this whole place, and it's not doing that well. Eric Kawa, table salt is the best salt on the market. Don't at me. It's funny. I've had somebody tell me that when they first started, they literally did that. It didn't turn out well. Fish school, what's your drama? I'll tell you later. The next time I see you one of these days, I'll tell you. You do not need drama. You don't need to have like drama spilled on like live streams. I'll save that for Rico. Like Rico, I always like joke that he's like a drama magnet, and sure enough, so there's like more drama there. So like I will leave like Drama Town to him. It's great for his viewership and stuff. I'm just like, I'm way too old and crankety for that. I love Red Sea Blue Bucket way better than the Pro. Two Please is not happy with Red Sea Coral Pro. See, I've never used it, and some people swear by it. Some people are like, this is the best salt ever. So yeah, there you go. Dude, okay, here's what's crazy. And this is for the people that have been in the hobby for like a really long time. Like think like Sanjay Joshi or like Mike Paletta, Tech Rico. If you were here in like the formative years of this hobby in the internet generation, it was like the Wild West of colliding egos and stuff. So if you were on like Reef Central back in the day, I mean, every now and again you would just see like all hell break loose, and you just get in like there's these people that are having like these insane fights over some dumb aspect of the hobby, and that then filtered down into like aquarium clubs, because the aquarium club was kind of like the real life extension of like the online message board. And you would have like these power struggles that happen in like reefing clubs. And by the way, we're talking about like small reefing clubs of like 50 to 100 people, right? This isn't exactly some big organization where there's like, you know, political backstabbing going around, but it would get so bad that like these groups would be so dysfunctional that like for their events, like a frag swap, for example, would be, there would be people that would have to call security. There would have to be like armed security just in case somebody showed up. Like me talking about that sounds like dudes from like the 1960s and 70s talking about like how in martial arts their dojo gets invaded and like they have like, you know, sensei battles and stuff. It sounds ridiculous, but that's kind of what it was like back then. So again, for all you like old school veterans, you know what I'm talking about. People can get dramatic over the dumbest, smallest thing, even a reef aquarium hobby. And well, and actually, if you pay attention, there's plenty of drama to be had right now. Even there's plenty, especially with like the proliferation of like YouTube and online personalities. Like when I started YouTube, there was maybe like 3 other channels talking about reef aquariums. Now there's like 300 and probably growing by another 100 per week. There's everybody that has a camera and a fish tank is a YouTuber now. And oh boy, when you have like novices to the platform get into it, and then you throw in like vendor drama, oh man, it's delicious. Like if you're into like the drama landscape, endless. It's like it springs eternal. So like I said, I'm a little bit too old for this right now. Can't get into it. And Fish School, thank you for the 99 cents. Lawson, hey, what's up? Awoken, haha, the forums back then were nuts. Yeah, and like and there's like these public bannings that would happen. Like do you guys remember like this dude named shoot, I don't even remember this guy's name, but he was like a big advocate for like deep sand beds, but he was like very evangelical about his approach to communicating his ideas. And so he would say stuff, and basically it would end with, if you're not doing it my way, you're going to be a failure in this hobby. It was like that type of attitude. That went poorly with some people. And finally, at some point, he was like discredited, and he just got banned off of the entire platform, I think. It was insane. RCCP has 2 high levels for me. Blue Bucket is much more in line. Okay. Yeah, I mean, if you're seeing like high levels in your salt, I could see, you know, going with some stuff that's more toned down. Oh yeah, Tang Police, that was a thing. Okay, actually, before I go, 4 a.m. here in Singapore. By the way, I'm jealous that you're in Singapore. I love Singapore. Would it be all right for me to suddenly dose alk? And to have it suddenly spike from 7 to 10, that is bad. So if you have low chemistry, right? Just like what he's saying, his alkalinity is 7, he wants it to be like a little higher, right? Do not go crazy and start spiking it. Nothing in this hobby that happens quickly is positive. So even like for us, when we have this system here, I think at one point had an alkalinity of 3. Everything's fine, but we would like to see it something closer to 8. For us to get it from 3 to 8 really should take about 6 months, and no faster, because again, everything is fine. What won't be fine is for us to take it from 3 to 8 tonight. That'd be very, very bad. So take it slow. Like as long as like stuff isn't crashing before your eyes, right? If you're gonna do anything like dramatic, just do a larger water change, because even in like that type of heavy-handedness, it's still relatively gentle. All kinds of drama, yeah. Tech Your Talk, you're not even exaggerating about the drama. Yeah, so Tech Your Talk, okay, we met through the hobby. Like he does not have an aquarium, he hasn't had one for a decade, but that is how we met. And Like he was like a fixture in the industry. Like he has made websites for companies that you've heard of. Okay, like he knows, or he knew people in this industry, right? All the way to the top. And yeah, he was there for like all the wars, all the way through the 90s. Are you talking about Jobert? No, Jobert was not deep sand bed. He was like plenum. Maybe he was like that. I don't know. I've never met the guy, and I'm guessing he's French, so I don't even know if he speaks English. Tang please seem to be cooling off. I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Like, if anybody ever asks me, I'm like, you need to have the biggest tank humanly imaginable. So I guess I'm still there. Awoken, Than, I'm locked up in checkout. Help. What should I do? Okay, so chances are there is like a little button over by like your address and information and stuff like that that says like confirm or update or something like that. And that is what is causing your little like spiral of death. So check and make sure of that. We use like an online shopping cart that's free as Magento, and for whatever reason, like it has this little thing where if you are typing in all your shipping info and your billing info and stuff like that, and then you move past it and then try to accept like the next step down, it messes up because you have to like accept all your information up above. So hopefully Awoken that helped you out there. Dave's Nanotanks, what is up? He's been lurking. I have an ammonia spike. My clownfish isn't doing well. Did a 5-gallon water change. Should I do one more? Ammonia spike is not good. You might want to do like some smaller water changes. Like you don't want to do a whole lot of stressful activity right now. But no, if it is just ammonia, you can maybe even do like some chemical filtration for that. Like there are things that specifically remove ammonia. Stu Bender, what are your feelings towards those color additives, which seem to be just trace elements? Should people use them if they're not testing for? Oh, okay. You should never blindly add anything that you're not actively testing for. So if you are curious about something, like for example, potassium. Potassium is a major element in the reef aquarium, like water chemistry landscape that people don't really pay a lot of attention to. It's not super bioavailable, even though there's a lot of it in salt water, and people attribute that to like helping a lot of SPS color up to bring out blues and things like that. Whatever. You should test for it if you're going to be adding it. And things like iodine, potassium is a major element. Iodine is a trace element, and any trace element means that it is way less than 1% of the volume of salt water. So any addition of iodine is a gigantic heaping boatload, and you want to be paying attention. Are you throwing your values way out of whack? Because I guarantee there's not a lot of iodine in salt water. Just simply doing the math, it's like it's in this grouping of trace elements, and all the trace elements put together is like 1%. So there's like boron and borate and like who knows whatever else is in that little mix of individual trace elements. Like the whole thing it's a trace element. So go easy on that. Like stick to like general like if I were to do any kind of feeding, I would look into just feeding like the cloudy supernate of frozen food and possibly some amino acid addition. Really basic stuff. Thanks, Dan. By the way, have you ever handled crazy expensive Zoas such as the 1K Stratosphere? I have not. We do have some expensive Zoas, but we've never really gone like full into like just trying to find like the most expensive ones possible. Have not, but I can see that trend happening sooner rather than later, especially if these different coral geographies start shutting down and not reopening. So a lot of zoanthids became practically impossible to find once Indonesia shut down. I would expect a lot of the really in-demand Indonesian origin zoanthids to go up in value quite a lot as all supply dries up. Yeah, the white walker acro, it's cool, but I have a feeling that it's difficult for it to retain that coloration. Like when they come in from the wild, they are just like all white, blue tip, right? And I think when they tend to be a little bit healthier, it's a little bit less white. It turns more like a not a beige, but you can see like some color in there. Like when everything is like white, I'm like, ooh. But there are white corals that are healthy. It's just usually when you see white corals, that's not the case. Rainbow Pectinia care. I would say medium flow, medium light. You can also just watch our video about them. And you can feed them if you're able to shut off the flow. And they do accept quite a bit of different types of food, like mysis, shrimp, things like that. I want to start a reef thinking of 40-gallon with a goby pistol pair of clowns, easy coral suggestions, and bubble tip anemone safe corals, or how about keeping an anemone from harming coral? So in a 40-gallon tank, there's nothing you're going to be doing about an anemone that decides to just climb all over the place. I have seen bubble tips that can touch end to end on a tank that size. So there really isn't going to be something that you can do a whole lot about other than move it away from the bubble tip if it ever approaches, which if a bubble tip wanted to, it could run 10 laps around that tank every single night. Having said that, they don't have the most harsh sting in the world. Ben would disagree with me because he's having like an allergic reaction to them. But if you're looking for stuff that might be a little bit hardier, I would look at some mushrooms and look at leathers and things of that sort. Toadstools and stuff. What's the par for that white walker? Mine is starting to pale. Lower par or blast it. You're living on the edge. I would say that if you provided it more light, you might bring out that white coloration more. Not to the point of bleaching, but again, I think that it being that type of acro can handle quite a bit of intensity. I never recommend cranking up the light though. I would almost tend to go lower and maybe creep the intensity up if you wanted to play with that. So I'm seeing some conversation about nitrogen cycling. That's one issue or one topic that I never really discussed on my channel as far as its own independent video. Maybe I should do that just so that some beginners can have that as a reference. Cool, seems to look fine, just not as blue. If you're looking at the blue tip, that might be an intensity thing. It also might be a nutrition thing. Going back to the whole potassium topic, I have noticed that when we feed a lot heavier and just try to work around potential overfeeding issues, the corals really do look good. But you don't want to be in a situation where you're feeding so much and you actually create a chemical imbalance in your tank and you start getting nuisance algae and like really thick like diatoms and stuff like that. You don't want to deal with any of that stuff. Or like red or black slime, don't want to deal with that. So I always recommend to people that want to go into feeding to never overfeed, because the downsides to running into like a nutrient problem greatly outweigh the positive aspects of like feeding. But if you're able to walk that fine line and feed as much as possible, but right before you're going to run into those chemistry issues, yeah, the corals really do dig it. The corals and the fish, really. My fish are super fat all the time. Yeah, I think people would benefit from your personal philosophy on the cycle. Well, honestly, it's not so much of a personal philosophy. Well, let me think about that for just a sec. Do I have a personal philosophy when it comes to the nitrogen cycle? Yeah, I guess I do. Especially with a lot of the newer products that are available. So there are a couple of different camps on this. There is the, if you use this product, you can be cycled in 2 days and you can start putting in stuff. There's no reason to wait. I've never really dabbled with those products. So I can't like give any personal experience on whether they work or not. You can probably find plenty of references online. I just tend to be super conservative and patient when it comes to that. So I have no issue whatsoever waiting like 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, and not even test the chemistry of the water. I just don't care, because even if you get over like the core nitrogen cycle, right? You have your ammonia spike that tails down as the nitrifying bacteria of that stage populate. Then you get the spike of nitrite, also still toxic. A different nitrifying bacteria builds up and starts to knock that down. So it goes from nitrite to then nitrate, the third population of bacteria that knocks that down. And then you're basically stuck with nitrate until you start developing anaerobic bacteria to denitrify and turn that nitrate into nitrogen gas. Let's say you completely get over that core aspect of the nitrogen cycle to the point where it is no longer toxic ammonia, it is no longer toxic nitrite. It's kind of annoying nitrate, but it's tailing down because of the denitrifying effect of low oxygen areas of the tank. Great. Even then, there's still a benefit to not doing anything and just hanging out and letting bacteria populations do their thing. Because even after 1 year, the difference between a 3-month-old tank and a 1-year-old tank is pretty substantial. And there is this like kind of this old wives' tale of aging an aquarium that really does work in my opinion and in my experience. So yeah, I guess like as my philosophy, it's like the best things come to those that wait. Stability is worth its weight in gold. A 1-year-old tank is marvelous, and you're more likely to run into a lot of bad issues trying to rush into stocking a tank that's not quite ready. ATF in the house. Can adding things like Dr. Tim's waste out in other bacteria cleansers cause bacterial overgrowth and drop O2 levels and pH drop? That's something that somebody actually has to measure. Creating stress for fish and corals and inverts. You know, again, I don't have the data. Don't have the data. I guess anything is possible, right? Because there are additives that you can drop your O2 levels, right? So there's like the red slime remover. The name is escaping me. It's in a red package. Chemiclean. That can definitely drop your oxygen levels. I like keeping 50 pounds of ceramic media, 50 pounds of rock, and a couple sponge filters conditioned just in case the tank breaks down or I need more space. Okay. Do you measure nitrates and phosphates in your tanks? If so, what are the levels? We don't regularly test them. We tend to run like high in both. So nitrates could be anything up to like 30. Hopefully it's closer to 5. Phosphates really depends. The highest we've ever been was like 1 part per million, which is super high. Super duper high, which is like what, like 1,000 times higher than it should be. So I should also put like a warning disclaimer on stuff like that, because you hear people say, oh, I keep my phosphates at next to 0 and it works for them, great. And I keep my phosphates super high, not intentionally maybe, well, intentionally when I feed, but it's not something that might work for you because you don't have my system. And that's not like me flexing on people. It's just like the dynamics of the system dictate what you are and what you're not going to get away with. So sometimes when like you hear a well-renowned coral expert's personality, whatever, talk about these things, you have to look at it in the context of their system, because what works for a 1,000-gallon aquarium will not work for a 5-gallon pico or nano. There's so many dynamics that simply do not translate at all. So like, be wary of that. So if you're asking about your 40-gallon tank and about what is appropriate phosphate levels, don't take recommendations from somebody that does not have something relatively close to what you have, right? So yeah, like find I don't know if like a role model is the right term, but like if you're gonna model your success after somebody else's success, make sure you're playing in the same league, right? So like I said, stuff doesn't translate. You would think that more would be ubiquitous in that sense. It's not. The stuff that Rico gets away with in a 500-gallon tank with a total volume of what, I don't know, 700-800 gallons, it's gonna be completely different even from going up to the 2,000, 4,000 gallons that I'll be working with. It'll be different dynamics, and obviously, like as the tanks get smaller, the differences get more pronounced. Harkins, do a feeding video, Than. Yeah, I should do a feeding video of like the different types of corals and stuff, because enough people are ask about coral nutrition, and it is a very interesting topic because it's not just what we put in the water. Like I was reading some research papers, and I almost never do that, but I did. I actually read, and there's a lot of talk about bacteria nutrition when it comes to corals. Like it turns out that corals eat a lot of bacteria. There's all these studies about, they use different corals as a study case. A lot of times they use POCILLOPORA, but they noticed that they're consuming a whole bunch more bacteria, per volume weight than even like zooplankton. Like you would think that like rotifers, because I'm always talking about rotifers are so good for nutrition and feeding, and that's what like causes like this feeding response and everything in my corals. But what really they're ingesting and consuming is bacteria. And what they're finding is that a lot of times these colonies of SPS are growing in such a way that they're not maximizing just light, but they're maximizing flow to create like microenvironments to culture bacteria that they can either eat or attract something else that eats the bacteria that they can then eat. So it's interesting where like I wonder, I think I might have mentioned it in a video that I did about Will's tank, because he does like a probiotic method in his systems, and does make me, curious about, are there steps that we could be taking to encourage beneficial bacteria, and how that will affect like the nutrition and inevitably like the growth rate and coloration of the corals. Awoken. Mentor. That's a good word. But also mentor also implies that there's like a relationship between you two, whereas I think I'm talking about more like Instagram hashtag goals. So I was thinking more along those lines, I guess. Do you have any thoughts on split photo periods? No. I don't have any thoughts on that. I know, super helpful, aren't I? That UV will help Joey's bacteria big time. We're just talking about bacteria for feeding, and UV is the opposite end of the spectrum to knock it all dead. Yeah, which is interesting if you think about it, because like, you know how I always say there's so many different ways to be successful in this hobby. There's some good arguments that always running UV could lead to some good success, where you're completely foregoing any thought of like the nutritional aspects and whatnot, but just kind of going towards like the laboratory clean end of the spectrum and just like running 24/7 UV. So that's kind of interesting. I wish that some manufacturer would invent a UV based, an LED based UV sterilizer, because from what I understand right now, there aren't any UV systems that are LED based. They're all still fluorescent based, and one of the things that's preventing me from hooking up like a lot of UV devices to my systems is just the electrical consumption. Since I built this new building, my electricity bill is less nice than it once was, and there's like nothing really in here. So just like the fact that there's a fridge that's just plugged in all the time, and there's like this and that that's just plugged in and running, and we're running more fluorescence over in the greenhouse and all that stuff, I'm like, man, I need to do something about this electricity bill. So like running on top of that a whole bunch of large UV systems that are all T5 fluorescent based, not really about that action. Yeah, Joey has the kind of cyano, not the beneficial bacteria. Yeah, and I could see that, and I think that that's where like possibly just running all your water constantly through UV and just knocking it dead might help. Dr. Welsh, hello Than and all your lovely people, and all you other lovely people. Hope all is well. Thank you. Things are good. I can't complain. My UV heats up my tank like crazy. Goes from 80 up to like, okay, 85, 86 is not good. I take that down. Yeah, and I guess that's another thing, right? Just like the heat that lighting source would put into the water. Than, if and only if, I want to add more corals to my order, do I choose pickup instead of shipping? I forget. Yes, go ahead and select like local pickup / live sale / adding to an additional order, and that way you're not charged multiple instances of shipping. Lenny Kruger, ooh, free feather duster. Yeah, we do have a lot of those just growing like crazy. There's like hundreds in our tanks right now, and I'm gonna ask Ben to like shoot some pictures of them, and we'll create like a stock item. So if people want to add one to an order, we can find one for you, because they grow large. Like they're like this big, some of them. And thanks, Aaron. Yeah, for helping out with the shipping ordeal. And again, if anybody out there has qualified for free shipping, but had along the way paid for shipping, don't worry about it. We refund all that stuff. I mean, if you're worried, you can always send me an email reminding me, say, hey, by the way, I'm one of those people. Don't worry about it. we'll take care of it. As far as shipping goes, okay, so I haven't like looked at my email or anything. I don't know if anybody's actually placed an order other than Awoken, but usually like tomorrow is when I start sending out like the shipping emails and do all of that stuff. I'll try to get most of the orders sent out Monday for delivery Tuesday, weather permitting. Some of the orders that are placed later might have to be Tuesday for delivery Wednesday. If you need to have it sent on a particular date, feel free to send us an email and we can get that on our shipping calendar. We have no problem like pushing it out a week or so or later in the week, because there's only physically so many orders we can even pack on a Monday. Like basically it's like 20 boxes is pushing the limit. So we don't mind deferring it slightly. Add one. I've gotten 2 or 3 on every coral. Yeah. Well, there's like little ones that maybe, but there's also some big giant ones that we have. Ernie Wallace, they nuked all my calcareous feather dusters, clogged my pipes. Yeah, they're one of the many things I can. Usually when it comes to stuff growing and clogging pipes, for us it's fermented snails. Chemiclean even says use a bubbler in the tank the whole time you're treating due to low O2. Yeah, definitely. Ernie Wallace, do you do Saturday delivery? Yes. However, okay, so it is an additional cost option. I believe it's $15, okay? So there is an item in the miscellaneous section that you can check out with for Saturday delivery. And that's just to cover the upcharge that UPS charges us. Now, last week for the first time, we had an issue where somebody simply wasn't eligible for Saturday delivery. Like the delivery service just for their geography did not offer it. I don't know if they were just like off the beaten path a little bit, but that was the first time I've ever even heard of that. But yeah, that was an issue. So I would say 99.999% of the time, yes, we can do Saturday delivery, Ernie. ChemiClean is great stuff. If you use it, it bothers me not knowing what it is. I don't recall, but when I did my video about cyanobacteria, in the comments there's like a big discussion that other people have figured out what it was. It was some sort of antibiotic, I think. Reef Dudes, welcome from Canada. Oh, and then you know what? We're into overtime now, looks like. So I'll just cover the last few of these comments. If you have any last minute questions, feel free to type away. Adam, I'm debating against starting my own coral business one day. Would you advise for or against it? Depends on what your goals are. Like for me, I have a very peculiar life philosophy. If it was just about like me making as much money as humanly possible, I would not be doing this. I mean, I was like trained as like a corporate lawyer. I did the entire like corporate climb thing, got the fancy title, got the corner office, got all the cool stuff, made a lot of money, and I was like chronically unhappy and went through like a pretty drastic midlife crisis. So from that point, I pretty much decided that from this point forward, I'm only going to do stuff I enjoy, and I'm going to try to find a way to get compensated for all of it. So in that sense, the coral business has been great for me and great for my family. I get to spend a lot of time with my family, get to hang around with generally happy people, which is, that can't be, understated, because like one of my friends, she is working as an attorney in a big prestigious law firm, making gobs of money, and it's a rough life. I mean, it sounds like, oh, boo-hoo, you're making lots of money. Like, I wish I could make any amount of money. I get that. But when you're talking about happiness, a lot of it, really does come down to what you do on a day-to-day basis. And yeah, like for me, this has completely saved my psyche. And for that reason alone, it's like, it's great. And if you can find something like that that you can do that can pay the bills, it's ridiculously rewarding in its own right. And I couldn't recommend it enough. Not everybody is entrepreneurial. Not everybody is in the place in their career or in their life where they can just do that. Like when I decided just to, like, you know, burn my entire professional career down and do whatever the heck I wanted, I couldn't have done that if I was paying like a 30-year mortgage, a car payment, and had like a couple of babies mamas, and you know, like I couldn't do that. Like I don't have any kids. You know, that's very liberating financially, you know, guys and gals that know what that's all about. You know, I'm not saving up for anybody's college fund. You know, there's a lot of sacrifices that a lot of people have to make that makes you know, taking a step in that direction difficult. So, you know, I get that it's not for everybody, but it's definitely worked out for me. Thomas Muller, Chemiclean is an antibiotic, and that's why it's not allowed in Germany. I have heard that before. My truck, or semi as you call them, broke down. Oh, that's too bad. But welcome back to the stream. I remember Red Forge was saying hello from Ireland. Ever battled dinos in your tank? How do you battle it? I haven't. But that might be a situation where you might look into UV again. Reef Dudes, hey Than, it is a lifestyle job. Yes, lifestyle company. And so like a lot of times people like start companies with the intention to one day just like sell out of them, and which is fine. And some people are like, I just want to get into a company, be the CEO, and get that company sold in 5 years, and I just get my golden parachute, and then I'm gonna go and like vacation in Cabo or Ibiza, wherever. That's not me. I actually like doing what I do. Calypso's Reefing, shout out to the garden, welcome. And this is in overtime. I'm probably gonna be checking out here, eating the rest of my mochi. 25 years in IT, I get where you're coming from. Happens, yeah. I was miserable as a PhD engineer, now I raise birds. Yeah, you know, if you're unhappy at your job, there's practically no amount of money that's going to make it worth it. Like when I left my corporate gig, I remember thinking at the time they could double my salary and I wouldn't stay. And I was making good money. Like I was making like, you know, business lawyer money, and yeah, like doubling my salary would not have made me stick around. I mean, especially when you're doing the whole corporate climber thing, and you know, for those folks that are into that, great. I could not mentally handle it, because where I was, I found out that like pretty much after you get to a certain point, you're just surrounded by sociopaths that are also trying to climb. And like for me, it's like the climb wasn't what was driving me. I was like, I want to do interesting work, but they just wanted to climb. Ugh. It's an awful experience to be around people like that. So, you know, for the professional types out there that know where I'm coming from, if you guys can handle it, more power to you. All right, guys, I'm out. So again, thank you so much for attending the live show. It is almost 4 o'clock, so we went for a good 2 hours. 2 hours is like a healthy length live stream here. Hopefully, fingers crossed, I will get some more video content out there. Somebody was like saying like, I'm gonna unsubscribe from you. Like, good, because I kind of deserve it for that. Yeah, because I mean, like, people subscribe with the expectation of produced video. That's why they came, and then there hasn't been in a while. There's reasons, but I want to get back into that. So, and yeah, best quote, at a certain point you're surrounded by sociopaths. You think I'm joking? I am not joking. There is like a direct correlation between corporate success and sociopathy, or straight out psychopathy. It's like, it's a known thing. It is a known thing. I gotta ask, were your parents upset that you quit the corporate gig, or are they supportive? They seem supportive. Yeah, they are. So, okay. All right. I will tell you a funny story, okay? And okay. So, you know, I grew up in your stereotypical Asian household, right? Where, you know, the parents are tough on you. They want you to do well academically. So, you know, I grew up in that environment. Like my parents weren't entrepreneurs. My dad was a professor. My mom was like a research biologist. And so, you know, the path to success is go be a doctor or PhD, MD, you know, that line of thinking. And so I wasn't around entrepreneurs at all. Like I was around like science people. And like the Burmese community here, it's like 90% doctors, okay? So there isn't even like entrepreneurship in my in my cultural community. And also, you know, like I went to a public high school. Nobody's like really, you know, in that mindset. They're thinking about dumb stuff anyway. So everybody's like, you know, thinking about college and all that stuff. So my parents are really tough on me, and I was like muddling through the University of Michigan. It's a very challenging institution to go through when you don't quite know what you want to do in life yet, you know, because it was pretty clear to me after my first term freshman year, I'm not going to be a doctor, right? I'm a biology major. I'm pre-med. They say, look to your left, look to your right. One of those people aren't going to be there. And at the same time, I met one of my friends who was going to be an eye surgeon, and it was very clear that I wasn't going to be an eye surgeon. So I was like really kind of having like a struggle bus time through my undergrad. And this does come back to my parents and how supportive they are, right? So this was maybe like my second year in college. And I remember like I did very poorly in one of my classes. And I remember like walking downstairs, because I lived with my parents back then. Walking downstairs and telling them, like, you know what, Mom and Dad, I think I got like a D+ or something in some class. It was like really bad. And you know, my dad was like really disappointed. And they started getting on my case, and I think, and the reason why I'm foggy about this is I literally passed out. Like I face planted. I just remember like bending over slightly and went just face first into the ground. And I woke up with my parents, like, you know, they're trying to like revive me and waking me up. Like I went completely unconscious, knocked out on the ground, just from like some panic attack or stress or whatever. Okay. From that point forward, my parents never got on my case about anything ever again. So anyway, that's my story. So me quitting a highly paid job to do what I enjoy, my parents weren't going to say a damn thing about that. So, and you know what? It's good for them too. They love this business. They would rather be doing this than anything else. Rather than vacationing around the world for the rest of their retirement, they would rather be here cutting corals and looking after like these aquariums. So everybody's happy, right? Everybody's happy. Okay, so anyway, you guys got a cool story out of it. I'm hungry now. I gotta go. All right, everybody enjoy the rest of your weekend. Hopefully enjoy the show, and I'll see you sometime next month, but preferably in the comments of an actual edited video. So I've said it enough times. Hopefully I can will that into existence.